Welcome to day 7 of our Advent Devotional Series. Today we're looking at the question, why are you crying? Our reading comes from John 20:11-18. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw 2 angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and one at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this she turned round and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realise that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her.
Yeah.
Cool.
You
Yeah,
ready?
do you like the way it's like smushed in?
I have no idea how you're doing this. Take 5.
Today, we're looking at the question, why are you crying, in verse 13, which was put to Mary Magdalene on the morning she went to the tomb of Jesus. She had arrived with some women, but their surprise, they found Jesus' tomb empty. 2 of Jesus' disciples were with the women, but they had left them when the women were then approached by 2 individuals who turned out to be angels. Sometimes when angels appear in the Bible, people become terrified and tremble with fear. But that morning, Mary was so focused on her grief about Jesus' body being gone, she hadn't realised the angel's importance. It is interesting that the angels had asked her why she was crying, because they would have known why. Her Saviour's body had gone. They did this mainly to point out her own unbelief in who Jesus was. Yes, the tears and distraught were real, but if she had recalled Jesus' teaching, then she and the disciples would have connected the dots and realised that his words were true and that he will be resurrected. To follow on from this, in verse 14 and 15, Mary is standing with Jesus, but she does not recognise him, and he asks her again why she's crying and who it is she's looking for, reiterating the lack of belief and understanding in his teachings. It's only when Jesus speaks Mary's name that she sees him. Mary herself had forgotten who it was she was grieving over. The angels questioning her, "Why are you crying?" probably sounded a bit insensitive on first reading, almost as if they were telling Mary to pull herself together. But that's not it. Their point is, do you know who you're grieving over? Now, Mary of course knew Jesus as the man of sorrows, whose lifeless body hung on the cross, but she hadn't known Jesus as the king conquering the grave. Similarly, she knew him as the suffering servant, led like a lamb silently to slaughter. She did not know him as the Saviour who had risen to reign. While the 2 disciples of Jesus had left the tomb, Mary Magdalene stayed there, showing her true love and devotion for Jesus. She wouldn't be moved until she found his body and returned it. This showed her dedication for Jesus, and because of this devotion, she then became the vessel that told the disciples of the good news that Jesus had risen from the dead. Mary loved Jesus. It was her love for him that caused such grief and the need to stay by the tomb, but she had forgotten the Saviour he was. Throughout life, we can easily forget who it is we worship. We can be brought to despair when there is hope to cling to. He who knows your name calls you today, to remind us that he who entered the grave conquered it. With all of this in mind, let us reflect on whether we are firm in our faith like Mary Magdalene, or are we waiting for Jesus without recognising who he truly is, risen, conquering the grave. As Paul writes in his letters, we do not grieve like those without hope, but may we be granted fresh perspective of Jesus today, one that brings comfort in despair, light in darkness, and hope in hopelessness. So this Christmas, may we reflect on whether we are like Mary Magdalene, being immovable in our faith and trust in Jesus, or are we standing there waiting for Jesus to say our names when he is right in front of us? We just aren't recognising him for who he truly is, knowing that he is the one that rose from the tomb.